Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after all the drama that Crimsix was involved with just before the Black Ops 2 throwback tournament with Nadeshot, Scump is now throwing some daggers Crimsix's way by coming up with his favourite ever set of teammates if he had to form a god squad right now with himself on the roster from all time the players that he's teamed with. Let's not forget Crimsix was his longest ever teamed duo. He excludes Crimsix from this roster, puts an interesting character there instead. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, on the Rostermania stuff, we saw Clay had a bit of an interaction with the Tatch earlier today. He's also talking about how Eli Standy has had, I mean, there's no way this can possibly be true, right? But okay, whatever, fair enough. He's been grinding Valorant, and they've both been grinding a fair bit of Valorant, and maybe that's a potential duo for the new season, which we've thought about for some time. Now, Clay was also getting into some drama with regard to the current maps in the game. As Envoy says, need more maps in the beta. I believe they're adding 2 more maps today, possibly, but still. A lot of pros have played a lot of these maps, as he says, played these maps 1,000 times. Maps like Favela, they're not good competitively. I don't think anyone expects them to be. The experience is fun for pubs and it's very vertical and everything, but I don't think anyone really expected that to work. But also you've got other maps like Skid Row and Estate that, as Jacob says, they sucked 14 years ago, and I'm shocked they're not winning people over now. So this was some of the debate on this, and Clay gave an interesting thought, given that he is an OG from back then. The only good MW2 map was Terminal. Rest are buns. Rose-tinted glasses, he says. This is definitely interesting because this is what we have to rely on, right? We know the maps in the game at launch. Yes, they're bringing out a couple of new maps post-launch, but there are 16 MW2 maps that are coming into the game. We will need to find 5 of them to play in competitive. And we've talked about, okay, Scrapyard, Karachi, Invasion, like Terminal, HyDra, stuff like this. And that's viable, and maybe there's some other ones as well. Clay reckons, though, there's only one good map in there, and it's Terminal. Everything else is terrible, which doesn't really set us up in a great spot. Now, other players, well, coaches now in Jacob's case, disagree. And as he says, Terminal, HyDra, Scrapyard, all were some mix of good, or at least fun, in my opinion. Invasion was pretty good for comp as well, but not very fun. Besides that, pretty bad maps, with Skid Row for sure being the worst one. And Clay's like, HyDra and Scrapyard are good, what are you cooking? HyDra is for sure good, Scrapyard maybe not good, but that for sure fun. And then Eggs wades in. HyDra is only good for demolition though, and that would be interesting to think about because we think HyDra is going to be played in competitive this year. I would imagine that it is, but if Aches is like, well, it's actually good for demo, maybe it's worth considering demo for the 3rd mode. And he says that CTF was okay. And, you know, says, well, you guys are up 1-0 in CTF and you just started camping corners. I was running circles around you. And Clay seems to believe that maybe their opinions are based somewhat on how good they were at that game at the time. And Clay even went to go find some old VOD here of a game that they played back in the day. I mean, have a look at this, right? AOX versus Extravagant. We've got, look at the quality of it. We've got Astro on the left here. We've got Frizz on the right-hand side. The MLG Pro Circuit. And here we are loading into a Scrapyard capture the flag for, you know, oh wow, Crowster, Clayster, wow, what a crazy team. So interesting times for sure. And as, yeah, Jacob goes on to say, would have helped if Pat wasn't baiting you. So he brings up the scoreboard here. What have we got? Sidrock, JCat, Big Timer, Rambo, and yeah, Sinister, Aches, Crowster, and Clayster. Wow. Awesome stuff, no doubt. So maybe these guys know a thing or two about what they're talking about. But Aches actually does say that Invasion is good. And I think Invasion is one of those maps. It's not in the beta yet, I don't think. And we might just have it on the full release. It's, well, let me just find it real quick. It's the map that looks like this, right? You see a lot of it being played if you watch any of like Hitch's Modern Warfare 2 throwback tournaments. They're always on this one. So yeah, this probably isn't the most fun pubs map, but it does play pretty well for competitive. It seems to be the general perception, but Clay doesn't agree. Invasion, Demo, CTF, and Search were horrible. Hardpoint on that map will be insanity. So we'll see. The pros, Clay doesn't seem super optimistic, but then again, he does say that last 2 years have been atrocious as well. So it's like, well, at least Terminal's good, as far as Clay's concerned, and maybe there's a couple of other decent maps in there as well. But yeah, JP's, oh, well, not saying much, but these most recent maps were, you know, at least these comp MW2 maps were better than what we've played for the last 2 years, which is probably true, and even Clay agrees with that one, but he doesn't think they're necessarily that good. So yeah, I wonder what the pros will decide, just because we mentioned the 5 maps earlier, High Rise, Terminal, Scrapyard, Karachi, Invasion, that were usable for competitive back in the day. I do wonder, especially with Hardpoint in play, how many of those still will be, whether there's any other alternatives that should be worthy of consideration. Certainly some of these maps, like Estate and Wasteland and Underpass and Derail, like, they're never going to be really viable. So, you know, your options are not incredibly limited, like Rust as well. Like, there's no way Rust is going to be useful, right? So there's quite a few of these maps that are immediately completely useless from a competitive perspective. I'm thinking even a map like Subbase might be able to work if they get the spawns right, but it's definitely tricky to say. So I think the maps and the spawns are big concerns for understandable reasons, but at least we kind of know where we stand, right? Rather than hoping the game launches with good maps and then it turns out that everything's terrible, which has kind of been the case for the last couple of years. Now let's talk about this drama then with Scump. So he was asked on stream yesterday, what would he do if he had to put together an all-time CoD roster of the teammates that he's played with? Scump, illustrious career. He's played with many great players, pretty much played with all the great players really over the lifespan of competitive Call of Duty. You'd have thought he might put together the Dynasty team, the arguably the best ever CoD team, at least like the best ever, I would say definitely the OpTic Dynasty, the greatest ever, I would, in terms of like, maybe they're one of the same thing, but you know, I want to give respect to the Complexity Dynasty because the dominance they had with Crim, Eggs, TP and Karma and also Clay before that was unprecedented and will never be repeated, making like, what, 14 of 15 finals in a row, winning like 12 or 13 of them, like just completely insane stuff. The OpTic Dynasty was a bit different, lasted for longer, whatever. I thought Scump might say, well, you know, formal, Karma, Crim, you know, well done, give some respect. But actually, that's not what he says. He does say formal immediately, that was his obvious pick, and for very good reason. He then says Shotzzy, and I thought this was I mean, honestly, if you're Shotzzy, you gotta put this on your wall somewhere. I don't know, like frame it or something. The quote.
All right, wait, here it is. This may probably hurt other pros, but it'll be one of my biggest chows for a deep question. You've had such an illustrious career with COD. I also said in your chat that some pros may be offended, but it will come with a big reward for your heartfelt, elaborate answer. You know, out of all COD rosters you competed with, give me your all-time COD roster with you included, CWL or CDL, with you starting. Also, yell Honolulu.
Yes, yeah, first yell Honolulu. Yell it. Honolulu.
Honolulu! Okay.
Honolulu!
Okay, there's that. And then, okay, I have to make a roster of my past teammates?
So all of your past teammates, you have to form the best roster.
Okay. Me, Formal, Shotzzy.
Wow.
Damon.
Wow, my bad, Crim. Ha! Sorry, run it up.
Are we ready?
So you got to be buzzing about this if you're Shotzzy, right? Getting included by Scump on a list of kind of like favourite ever teammates. If Scump had to form his roster of players, I'm guessing in their prime as well, he would want to take Shotzzy, which is a real good sign for how good Scump thinks Shotzzy is, you know? Like, Shotzzy, obviously, people know that this guy is very talented, but still, for Scump to give him respect on this level is pretty impressive, because we know that Shotzzy's achieved a lot already, but, you know, last year there was controversy about Ake saying, oh, he's not a superstar and all this stuff, and look, his performance last year was good. Was it absolutely incredible? No, but, you know, what Scump says is still on the money, I think, in terms of having him around that ballpark conversation. But, you know, Scump's team with Dashy and other players that he could have mentioned. But no, he puts Shotzzy in there instead. And it's actually really interesting what roster that would mean to be formed, right? Because you'd have Shotzzy and Scump, I guess, on the SMGs. And then you'd be having Karma, I guess, and Formal on the ARs. Because I think Karma would probably prefer to, if they were to form this theoretical team, that's probably how they'd prefer to do it. Unless Scump wanted to run the flex, and then Karma could run the second sub, which is also possible as well. But yeah, so obviously TTP, Scump was going to mention Formal. That was a no-brainer. And yeah, it's just interesting that he didn't mention Crim, right? Because Scump could very easily have said this team and avoided anyone talking about it. No one would have even batted an eye. But the fact that Scump deliberately decided to pick Damon, obviously Matty, Piper, and not Crimsix, was obviously going to make people start talking about this, right? And there's other names that he could have mentioned as well. I mean, we'll just have a look here back in Scump's career. This is like all of the Premier level LAN tournaments that Scump's played at some time, and he's played with everyone pretty much. We've got Aches here, we've got TP, Fears, Merc, Big Timer, Nature, Ricky, JCap, Proofy, Clayster, of course, that was not mentioned. Then Enable very briefly as that OpTic Dynasty period begun. And then let's not forget as well, Crimsix is his longest ever teaming duo. He teamed with him for like well over 4 years, from back in right at the start of Advanced Warfare, all the way through the entire Jetpack era, through World War II, and then even through Black Ops 4, even after they got rid of Formal. So we know that there was the beef with Scump and Crim, and that Scump was going to be the best man at Crim's wedding, then that didn't happen, then they had the beef, then they kind of made up a little bit, but there's still obviously something a little bit there, because otherwise Scump would have just mentioned Crim and called it a day, but that's not what he did. So yeah, very interesting, and obviously Scump's only team was Shotzzy for a brief period of time before he called it a day in Call of Duty, but you know, we know that Shotzzy gave Scump a lot of gas when they were teaming together, and the other way around. Scump gave Shotzzy a lot of gas, and this is serious gas, you know, to put him on that roster, theoretical roster. Maybe he's thinking, oh, well, you know, I need a better SMG, given, like, now Scump's probably a bit slower, wants to run maybe a flex more, I don't know. Then maybe you do need a player like Shotzzy in that team, rather than just Scump being the solo do-it-all sub as he used to be back in the day. So possibly an intelligent team Scump is forming, but someone had to find himself out of the team, and it was actually Crimsix that was the case for, and Scump could have maybe put Dashy in there, or could have put one of these other teammates that he played with during even the Chicago days, but that's not the case. Shotzzy makes the cut. So if you were Crimsix in this situation, I know that these numbers are from quite some time ago now, like, you know, what would you think? Would you be sending a DM to Scump? Would you be hitting the timeline to start popping off about this? I don't really think so, but still, Crim always does find himself in, there's always something following Crim around at some point, right? We saw only a couple of weeks ago the Nadeshot thing happens, which it all kicked off, and so, like, it's funny, really, like, Crim, even when he tries not to have beef with players, he always ends up having beef with certain players, right? And we know that's why he called his podcast Burned Bridges and all this, just because that's what tends to happen with Crim, and it happened with Scump a while ago, then they made up. It happened with Nadeshot very recently, happened with Formal a while ago. I don't know if he's got any beef with Karma, probably not. Karma seems such a chill guy that I imagine they still get on quite well, and even with Priestahh, a long-time duo that Crim had, they also had some sort of beef. So this is the issue that Crim faces, despite having the greatest ever, you know, the most accolades, the most wins and all this stuff. He, you know, doesn't get the respect that maybe he deserves from the fans, and I think at times that's because the players don't always treat Crim in the regard that maybe he could have been treated had he made some different decisions. But, you know, then again, the numbers speak for themselves, I guess. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below and all this stuff. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.